Few people could have imagined that an ordinary biologist who devoted his life to science would make a number of unexpected statements that would shock other scientists and the rest of the world. Having written a book about life, I was confused as a biologist, because the most important thing in my work was not the answer to the question of where life begins and where it ends. It seems to me that a person who studies all aspects of biological life should know this. That's why I decided to start writing a new book about death. However, in the process of creating it, I realized that death can be a continuation of life. Biologist Lyle Watson concluded. Who is this scientist who so confidently claims that another life is possible beyond the threshold of death? Let's get to know him. Malcolm Lyle was the eldest of three brothers born in South Africa's largest city, Johannesburg, to the Watson couple. From early childhood, it became clear that the boy was interested in the world around him. Lyle spent all his vacations at his grandfather's farm, hiking with his friends from the local tribes. His love of nature and travel did not prevent him from graduating from high school and becoming a student at the University of the Witwatersrand at the age of 15. He had a wide range of interests. He studied botany, zoology, paleontology, geology, chemistry, and ecology. At the age of 23, Lyle was appointed director of the Johannesburg Zoo. At the same time as his scientific career, Watson wrote nature scripts for the BBC channel, organized research expeditions, and wrote books. He tried to explain natural and supernatural phenomena to the general public from a biological point of view. While working on his new book, Romeo is Wrong, Lyle came to the conclusion that a person consists of two closed systems, physical and mental. The scientist argued that after one of the systems ceases to exist, the second survives. In his work, the biologist explained what phenomena led him to this conclusion. According to Lyle, the mental system in some cases is able to separate from the body when the existence of the physical system has not yet been completed. The biologist sometimes read about such cases in newspapers, but did not believe in them until he came across it himself. When I was hunting in Kenya, our group's car skidded on a dusty, overgrown road, and it overturned. She rolled over 3 times until she stopped at the very edge of a deep ravine. I found myself outside our small bus and could see the head and shoulders of the young conductor, who had been half thrown through the canvas roof on the last flip. I thought he was very lucky because he would have been flattened if the bus had overturned again. Then, without any pause, I woke up in the front seat of the bus, shook the red dust from my eyes, climbed out the window because the doors were jammed, and rushed to help the guy. I vividly remember all the details I saw while I was unconscious, and I don't have the slightest doubt that I was watching this scene while out of my body. But even personal experience of this kind defies a clear scientific explanation. The biologist cites other similar cases. Watson was told about one of them by his friend, a doctor in the British Air Force. He suffered an accident during takeoff from a small rural airfield, was thrown out of the cockpit, fell on his back, and lay without any signs of life. From the hollow in which he found himself after the accident, the airfield buildings are not visible, but nevertheless, the doctor clearly saw all the stages of the rescue operation. He recalls that he looked at the accident from a height of about 60 meters and saw his body. Looking at how the chief of the airfield and the surviving pilot ran to his body, he wondered why they needed it. His only desire was to be alone. He saw an ambulance enter the airfield and immediately stall. He saw the driver get out, start the car with a manual starter, jump into the cab, drive a little way and slow down so that an orderly could take something from the airport building, and then move to the crash site. At that time, the doctor, who had not yet regained consciousness, felt that he was moving away from the airfield, flying over land and rushing at great speed over the Atlantic. Suddenly, the journey ended, and when he woke up, he saw an orderly taking out an empty syringe. A later investigation into the circumstances of the accident revealed that all the details of the doctor's story fully corresponded to real events. Watson's other friend, Swiss geologist Albert Heim, fell off a cliff in the Alps in 1982 and survived. The amazing incident prompted Albert to collect information about other people who had survived the falls in the mountains. All of them, including himself, showed similar reactions to the seemingly inevitable death. Heim divided the moments preceding death into 3 phases. The first phase, a person tries to avert danger by resisting the inevitable. At the same time, there is a psychological struggle with a strange desire to submit to danger. The second phase, the falling person realizes the futility of the struggle and accepts the inevitability of death. At the same time, he experiences a state of detachment, in which a person is possessed by strange, irrelevant thoughts. One climber said he was annoyed and even somewhat interested in what was happening. Another climber said that as he tumbled down the slope, he worried about his favorite football team, which he listened to on the radio before falling. There is also a case described when a child who fell from a steep cliff was afraid of one thing: losing a new pocket knife. The third phrase, incoherent thoughts, crystallize into a classic image of a lived life. A 19-year-old extreme base jumper who fell from almost a kilometer high due to an unopened parachute says, "My whole past life flashed before my eyes. I saw my mother's face, our house, the academy I studied at, the faces of my friends, absolutely everything." Heim remembers, "I was replaying my life again, as if I were on stage, at the same time looking at it from the audience. All the visions were particularly colorful." Then, when the memories disappear, an unusual, mystical state sets in. We should not forget that we are talking about a sequence of reactions lasting literally a few seconds. A climber who fell in the mountains recalls, "My body was hitting rocks, breaking, turning into a shapeless mass, but my consciousness did not react to these physical injuries and was completely uninterested in them." Heim's study of accidents in the Alps concludes with the fact death as a result of a fall is very pleasant, and those who died in the mountains at the last moment of their lives contemplated their past, experiencing a state of transformation. Rejecting bodily suffering, they were dominated by noble and wise thoughts and feelings of peace and tranquility. They flew through the bright, majestic skies, then the world suddenly stopped. This state is so powerful and pleasant that those who have experienced it do not want to part with it. Recalling her rescue, the Austrian athlete said, "I saw how they tried to bring me back to life, but I did my best not to come back. I have never again experienced the feeling of utter happiness that I experienced at that moment." The separation of one closed human system from the second can occur during sleep, Watson said. As proof of this, the scientist cited a documented case that occurred at the end of the 18th century with a pillar of the Italian Catholic Church. On the morning of September 21, 1774, Alfonso de Liguori was preparing to celebrate Mass in the prison of Arezzo when he was struck by a deep sleep. 2 hours later, he regained consciousness and reported that he had just returned from Rome, located almost 200 kilometers to the south, where he was present at the death of Pope Clement XIV. At first, they thought he had dreamed it. Then when a courier brought the news of Dad's death 4 days later, they explained it as a coincidence. Subsequently, it turned out that everyone who stood by the bedside of the dying Pope not only saw Alfonso, but also talked with him as he led the prayer. Lyle Watson also gave examples where a closed system continued to exist after a person's death. Here's one of them. In 1921, James Chaffin from North Carolina died in a hunting accident. His 4 sons did not know how to divide the inheritance, and the notary did not have a will. Feuds began in the family, which lasted for several years. However, in June 1925, the eldest son dreamed of his father. Dressed in a black coat familiar to all family members, he was standing by the bed. The ghost reported, "You should find my will in my coat pocket." The brothers examined the clothes together and found in a sewn-up secret pocket a rolled-up note written in their father's handwriting. Read the 27th chapter of Genesis in the Old Bible. It was not a will, but the brothers realized that they needed to look further. A lost will was enclosed on the corresponding page of the book, according to which the property was divided. So the first story is about a representative of the Catholic Church who was transported to a considerable distance, where he was seen by other people. The second tells about the ghost of a man who was also seen and heard at a distance from his own body, in this case 4 years after his death. Reports of encounters with the deceased are not evidence of life after death on their own. However, if moving and talking apparitions of living people can be linked to conscious out-of-body experiences, then the appearance of spirits of the dead can be explained in a similar way. In other words, behind every ghost, there may be a guiding consciousness. This could be a manifestation of the afterlife, but it is likely impossible to prove. So what happens to a person's soul after his physical death? Biologist Watson suggests the following versions. If we agree with the theory of atheism and consider that the soul does not exist, then it remains to admit that after death, there remains only a mortal shell, which is simply buried. If we assume that Christian beliefs are right, then souls are an eternal settlement in heaven or hell. If you listen to Hinduism and the theory of reincarnation, then the souls incarnated into new bodies. And the last, rather controversial but no less real possibility. Disembodied systems abound around us in a form that we are unable to see. Nevertheless, it is possible to see these invisible systems with the help of complex devices. Watson names several similar devices invented at different times by different people. At the end of the 19th century, the Serbian genius Nikola Tesla invented a ring that made it possible to extract sparks from all parts of the human body. In 1909, it was used by the French physiologist Charles Laveran, who established the existence of an electric aura and received an image of his hand glowing in the dark. In 1939, two Czechoslovak scientists, Rudolf Dostal and Wieland Laufberger, published the first electrophotographs of leaves surrounded by a luminous crown from electromagnetic radiation. At the same time, a Russian electrical engineer and his wife, Semyon and Valentina Kirlian, independently came to a similar discovery. They designed a device that creates a high-frequency electric field. Over the course of 30 years, the Kirlians have photographed an entire galaxy of radiation emanating from plants, small animals, and all parts of the human body. These glowing hieroglyphs look like arrows, flashes of light, stripes, crowns, or clusters of sky blue, lilac, or yellow, bright or dim, glowing constantly, flashing or intermittently flashing, stationary or moving. The experiments were continued by engineering students. But instead of photographs, the events were recorded on a movie camera. Recently filmed films from Russia clearly show that these radiations are constantly changing, depending on changes in the physical and mental state of the subject. The biologist also talks about the device created by the American scientist Ken Johnson. With his help, the inventor obtained photographs of 500 volunteers, similar to those of the Kirlian couple. Each of those photographed has an individual, unique radiation. Subsequently, other scientists obtained similar results. However, despite the fact that these works have caused a sensation in the scientific community, skeptics refuse to admit that the radiation in the images is associated with the energy of a living organism. It is not easy to see with the help of instruments, something that does not yet have a name. But besides the devices, there are also people who claim to see a second human system. We call them mediums and often look at them with disbelief, but perhaps they are telling the truth. The British geographer and traveler Wilfred Thesiger, in his book Arabian Sands, tells about a gray-bearded Bedouin who, dismounting from his camel, looked at indistinct footprints in the sand, kneaded a few dry lumps between his fingers and said, "These are Bedouins. There are 6 of them. They attacked the Arabs and took away 3 camels from them. They passed through here 10 days ago." Skilled hunters are able to see things that others will never see. But the point here is not in the special sensory organs, but in the program of their internal computer. The possibilities of human perception are much broader than it might seem. There are people who are endowed with special talents, who are able to hear sounds in the supersonic range or see light waves invisible to others. It is possible that we could all develop a similar sensitivity. For example, the cone-shaped cells of our retina, cones, do not perceive infrared light waves, but maybe other rod cells located deeper on the sides of the retina are capable of this. Lyle Watson said that his idea of 2 closed human systems is close to the idea of Canadian professor William Tiller. Engineer Tiller believed that in addition to our system, which exists in our usual space and time, there is another one, The professor assumed that matter at this level has the characteristics of a hologram. This means that at this level we can see every object from all sides at once, as was the case with me when I could see an overturned car both from the outside and from the inside. Also, if you cut off a small part of the hologram, then you can recreate the entire image from it. For example, any living cell is a carrier of information about the body as a whole. Probably, there is a fragment of a cosmic hologram in each of us, which makes it possible to transmit thoughts at a distance, foresee the future and the existence of all other mystical experiences, noted Lael Watson. Dear friends, write in the comments what you think about these studies. Do you believe that after death, our consciousness will remain in existence, but in another world? Do you have any personal evidence of this? By the way, interesting videos on this topic have recently been released on my channel. I recommend you to watch. Please don't forget to like this video if you liked it. It motivates me a lot. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.